Welcome in, no off-seasoners, to your new favorite fantasy football podcast. But if you're already a no off-seasoner, you already know that. Hope whatever is in your cup, coffee, water, whiskey, wine for some of you out there, hope it's tasting great because it's about to taste better. Today, we're talking over or under Reaction Monday. Yes, you're probably not hearing this till Tuesday. I don't care. Look, it's Monday. I just came off my day job. Let's talk some football. All right. I watched a lot of preseason, more than I ever have before. And I'm doing it for not just me, but for you guys. So that way, y'all don't have to go through all of that brutal TV. But hey, there's a lot you can learn from preseason. Just by watching who runs with the first team, who's getting those first team reps, who's getting those backup reps for handcuff reasons, for wide receiver reasons, right? We have up to 4 or 5 wide receivers per team that we really need to be monitoring. What about quarterbacks? Quarterback competitions like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Sam Howell, Carson Wentz. I know that's not really a battle there, but there was a lot to like from Sam Howell this past weekend. Kenny Pickett, the first and only quarterback taken in the first round of this draft just back in April. So there's a lot to talk about. Antonio Gibson seems to be falling out of favor with a lot of fantasy football analysts. I think it's gone a little too far. I'm not even huge on Antonio Gibson myself since his breaking out, but I'm also a rational man, and I know when value is there, okay? And you can ask anybody who's watched any portion, listened to any of my podcasts, looked at any of my rankings. I like Brian Robinson Jr. more than the next guy, okay? Going into the draft, I had him ranked as RB3 among all rookies, behind only Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker III. As far as I know, I'm the only one that even had him that high. This is not an I told you so moment. This is a wake up moment, okay? I love Brian Robinson. I think he was severely underrated at Alabama. I don't understand why. The guy had 35 catches, which doesn't sound like a lot in the NFL, but in college, you cannot deny that that's a huge share of the passing game for a running back. But I also need to tell you what to underreact to, okay? There's a lot out there that tells you buy this guy, fade this guy. Well, all of it is within context. You want to get ahead of the game, but you don't want to be out there on an island for absolutely no reason and something that's going to make you potentially lose your league. What I want to start with first is Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. Look, I've said this time and time again. Brian Robinson Jr., RB3 for us, was the RB3, rookie RB3 going into this draft class. And then after the draft, we had him pegged at RB4 behind only James Cook, Kenneth Walker III, and Breece Hall. Most of that had to do with James Cook's second round, basically early third round draft capital, and the fact that he's in a much better offense in Buffalo as opposed to the Washington offense. That's not something that I am rushing to go get, right? Speaking of the Washington offense, Jahan Dotson right now, guys, is being drafted at the 14th, 15th round turn, okay? Jahan Dotson led the entire Washington offense in snaps in the preseason, okay? I know, it's all about context, right? That could be a bad thing. Was he running mostly with the second team, third team? No, okay? This is someone who matched and had more routes run with the first team offense than Terry McLaurin, okay? Did he get any targets? No, okay? Is that a Wentz to Dotson thing? It might be. We're not sure. But what I'm here to tell you is Antonio Gibson is still going to keep that RB1 spot, okay? So if you're in redraft, and we're talking redraft right now, let his ADP fall. Let his ADP just fall and take him, okay? If you believe in Brian Robinson Jr. that much, that's fine. Take him. He's like in the 16th, 17th round right now anyway. So you can get both if that makes you feel happy. But right now, there's no denying that Antonio Gibson is the RB1, okay? It may have been a little bit of a discipline thing after his fumble. We know that Ron Rivera is a little bit more of a strict, stern head coach. So if you do screw up, look, you're going to be taken off the field. And I think that's what we saw was a little bit of an example of Coach Rivera showing Antonio Gibson, look, this is your spot to lose. Don't screw up or we will pull you. We have a 3-down running back. I mean, truthfully, Brian Robinson Jr. is a 3-down running back. Why he's being faded more than any other Alabama running back in the history of Alabama running backs in the modern era, I'm not sure why. I think this is a guy that no matter what team he's on, he has a threat to be a 3-down back, okay? I think Brian Robinson Jr. being drafted to Washington is an insurance policy in case they decide not to keep Antonio Gibson. So, draft Jahan Dotson. He's got league-winning potential in the 14th, 15th round. I don't understand why that is so hard. He's going to be a versatile threat. He can run all over the field. He did that at Penn State. He's going to do it in Washington. He's going to do it in the league. Don't forget, Marquise Brown was my comp for Jahan Dotson. I'm not saying that's the outlook he's going to have. What I'm saying is he's got the same build. So it just depends how Washington plans on using him. Buy Jahan Dotson and don't buy into the fact that Gibson's losing his job yet, okay? Keep those Brian Robinson shares in Dynasty for sure. But he's probably nothing more than a handcuff in redraft this year. Let's talk about Treylon Burks and the Tennessee Titans. I liked what I saw from Malik Willis. I think he got to show off his deep arm. As I said in the QB evaluations about the rookie quarterbacks early, it was probably one of my first podcasts ever. And it came to fruition that he has the deepest arm, or at least the strongest arm in the entire class. At least when it comes to deep throws, I think he got to show that off. Look, Treylon Burks is going to be on a minimal snap count, whether it's because of his asthma issues or he's a first round wide receiver. He's going to run with the ones, okay? He got a minimal snap share. Who cares? This guy's going to start week 1, okay? At this point, it's just a matter of getting him up to conditioning speed for the NFL in week 1. As far as how he's going to perform, we don't really know, okay? But he's worth the risk, both in Dynasty and both in redraft. He's not costing you a whole lot, at least in redraft. In Dynasty, when I first drafted for rookies back in May, June, he was a top 5, top 6 pick. I imagine that ADP has fallen quite a bit just due to the bad PR that he's had over this offseason and training camp. So I'll lay off Treylon Burks for now, but I wouldn't be too worried if you have him in Dynasty, all right? Just hold on to those shares. His value might be at the very lowest right now, okay? Let him play a couple games. If you feel like you're worried, if you feel like this is someone you're trying to now panically sell, don't sell now. Sell after he catches a touchdown. Sell after he, garners 10 targets in a game and a 100-yard game. Those are ahead and in the outlook for Treylon Burks because it's just him and Robert Woods. And Robert Woods is going to be great this year too. Travis Etienne. I want to touch up on him a little bit too. Travis Etienne ran all of his snaps with the first team in Jacksonville, okay? Don't be worried. The problem with this is that everyone is all in on Travis Etienne as well. So, to me, if you're drafting 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds of your draft, Etienne's probably not your guy, okay? Unless you just plan on running out and getting 3 running backs in the first 4 rounds, because that's kind of where he's going in that 4th, 5th round area. And when you get there, you're probably asking yourself, do I want Ezekiel Elliott, ETN, Breece Hall, or Cam Akers? Okay? If you need help deciding that, here's what I'll tell you. What format are you in? Are you in full PPR? I'm taking ETN. Easily taking ETN. Okay? We've seen the chemistry that can be built on former collegiate teammates. We've seen it across the NFL. Is it working? There's a little correlation. But regardless, this is a Doug Peterson team now, and I understand this was not, ETN was not drafted by this staff. But all we needed to see was one preseason game for them to show us that they're still going to treat him like the first-round talent that he is, and gave him all of his reps with the first team. And for that reason, I'm all in on ETN. And what else? Chris Olave. Let's talk about Chris Olave for a little bit. I know if you look at the stat sheet, it's easy to say, look, the guy only had one target, and he caught it, sure. But let's give it some context. He ran all of his snaps with the first team as well. He was tied for the most snaps, at least with the first team. He tied with Marquez Callaway with 15. Each had a target themselves, okay? So the teams are right now just trying to test out and see what their offense looks like just in real-time speed. Don't get worried about these guys who are not obtaining a lot of targets or not, reeling in a lot of targets. They are out there for those first few series as long as you see them with the first team. And by that, I mean, it doesn't have to be the quarterback, but at least the first team offensive line, first team running back, okay? That should show you some signs of positivity there. So I would not be panicking on Chris Olave if you spent a first-round pick on him in the rookie drafts earlier this offseason. Don't panic. Hold. He's going to have a good game. If you want to sell him just like Burks, wait till he breaks out, all right? And here's a little sleeper note here in terms of snap percentage. An interesting one here, and it probably has a lot to do with some injuries to the Chicago Bears wide receivers. And that is Equanimeous St. Brown. Yes, Equanimeous St. Brown, the older brother of Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he matched, or just about matched, Darnell Mooney with the first team reps with around 17 and 10 routes run. Didn't get any targets. Mooney brought in the only target that he had. Look, this is an offense that you probably want to stay away from unless we're looking at the backfield like Justin Fields, David Montgomery. But let's say you went super heavy in the running back position earlier in your draft and you're looking for deep wide receiver shots in the dark that could potentially not win you your league, but at least give you a huge return of your investment. And EQ St. Brown is basically being undrafted right now, okay? Look, his experiment in Green Bay obviously didn't work out. He moved on, stayed in the division. And the Chicago Bears also have a brand new offensive coordinator in Luke Getsy, who I've talked about in extent and who I think is going to utilize Fields' legs a little bit more than normal. And there's a little bit of chemistry there. Luke Getsy coming from the Green Bay Packers into the Chicago Bears offensive coordinator position. There might be some chemistry there between EQ St. Brown and Luke Getsy, the new offensive coordinator there. So that's just something to watch, okay? I'm not pushing my chips in on EQ St. Brown, but what I'm saying is you would be dumb to not be keeping an eye on this, okay? All right, let's keep this rolling here. Here's some more interesting sleeper snap counts here for the Carolina Panthers. Here's a guy that I haven't been able to talk about, but secretly, I'm in on him, okay? Baker Mayfield heavily targeted tight ends during his time in Cleveland. And Tommy Tremble, the 22-year-old former Notre Dame tight end, to me is the leading runner for that tight end one position in Carolina. Okay? He had 10 snaps, all with the first team. Okay? He ran 6 routes. This is a tight end who is mostly going to be out there for running routes and catching passes. And I'm excited about him. This is an athletic, huge tight end, okay? He also has league winning. He also, I keep getting those two words, league winning. He's got league winning potential at a very cheap cost, mind you. So for those of you in Dynasty, you can probably get this guy for a 4th, 5th round pick. If you're in a tight end premium league, this is someone who I think could definitely help you out if you're shallow in the tight end position. Deontay Foreman, Chuba Hubbard, I'm not too worried about these guys. If you own CMC, you definitely want to own Chuba Hubbard. This staff has obviously shown that they trust Chuba Hubbard when CMC has gone down before. But if you're not interested in handcuffing your running backs, CMC, I'm not worried about. He's the absolute top 3 pick that he deserves to be. All right, and then just going to go back to Washington here. Formerly, I was huge on De'Ami Brown, who used to play with his now teammate, Sam Howell, and he only got 3 snaps, okay, in week 1. Usually, I would say that's a good thing. Maybe he's going to run with the first-team offense, but look, first-team offense, this is very obvious. Terry McLaurin, 19 snaps. Jahan Dotson, 22 snaps. I'm a little worried. Those De'Ami Brown shares, sorry guys, in Dynasty, I'm sure you spent a 3rd-round pick on him, something like that. It might be time to let go. I don't think this is someone who's going to carve out a role after all in the Ron Rivera offense. Again, touching back on the Washington offense, draft Jahan Dotson, draft Antonio Gibson. Okay, this is easy. That's easy money because it's not costing you a thing. I'm not saying get both, but if you can get both at a very low value or at a very good value rather, at a very low draft pick, do it. Absolutely do it. And let's look at the Kansas City game as well against the Chicago Bears. Again, I think I've touched enough on the Chicago Bears, but I do want to talk about the Kansas City offense for just a moment. Juju leading the first team in reps with Patrick Mahomes, ran all 11 first-team reps. Juju, that is, 7 routes run, the other 4 in run blocking. Look, Juju is going to be your best friend. If you are doing an RB-heavy draft in redraft, and I don't blame you, there's a lot of good running backs to have in between rounds 1 through 4. But in round 6 here, you've got Juju Smith-Schuster, who's likely going to be the number 1 wide receiver, not the number 1 pass catcher, because I still think Travis Kelce is going to lead this team in targets, and I don't think that's a stretch by any means. Travis Kelce is going to be that man again. I'm just not willing to pay a first-round pick or an early second-round pick for Travis Kelce. So that's where I'm going to pivot to Juju Smith-Schuster, who's only on the edge of 25, 26 years old. Yeah, he's 25 right now. So if you have him in Dynasty, you may as well keep this man because now he's playing with, I don't know, a top two quarterback in the entire league right now. His name is Patrick Mahomes. He's on like a 10-year contract. Yeah, I'm pushing my chips in on Juju Smith-Schuster for 2022, who is Juju is on a 1-year prove-it deal as well. So, Juju is going to be going out there and making sure he makes his money for whichever team he comes on. And guess what? Andy Reid is an honest man. If Juju Smith-Schuster goes out there and balls, I have no doubt that Juju Smith-Schuster will return as a Chief next season. So, do not worry about Juju Smith-Schuster. I think he is the man, the wide receiver to own in Kansas City, followed by Sky Moore, who's also not costing you very much right now. The ones that I would be fading in Kansas City right now, I would not be buying in on Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who had 9 snaps with the first team, and then Mecole Hardman, the former second-round pick from Georgia, who only had 4 snaps. So, yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more snaps, but here's another thing here. For those of you who go wide receiver heavy in the first few rounds of your redraft leagues is, look, we are going to ride this out until we get burnt out completely, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Look, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is being drafted in the 9th round. He's still the starting running back. Like, there's no doubt about it. He ran the most first-team reps with the Kansas City first team, and Rojo, it truly is on that bubble based on what I've seen from beat reporters coming out of Kansas City. So I'm not worried about Rojo right now. Okay, Isaiah Pacheco, sure, he's the Twitter darling right now. He's being absolutely loved, and every single snap he takes in practice is being posted. You know who's not being posted? The RB1 for the Chiefs. You know who's not being posted? The wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs. Draft Juju, draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire, go win your damn league with one of the best offenses in the entire NFL because of Patrick Mahomes. And I'll get off my soapbox there. Chicago Bears, I already told you everything you need to know about them. You don't really want to own anyone except Mooney, Montgomery, and Fields. Let's move on to the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts. The good thing about these two teams is it's pretty obvious who you're going to be picking out for these guys, except for the backfield for the Buffalo Bills. And I am a little worried myself, who I am big on James Cook. Yes, the brother of Dalvin Cook, the running back for the Minnesota Vikings. James Cook only had 7 total snaps. That would be the least amount besides Devin Singletary for all running backs in that Buffalo offense. Zach Moss had a little bit more with 9, with 2 targets, 3 carries. Okay, so I think we're going to see a whole lot more of James Cook in the next few weeks of the preseason, and that's when I really think he's going to be able to show what he's got. I think this Buffalo offense really wanted to see just what they had in some of their young guys put there on the first team, giving Zach Moss a little bit more chance to prove who he is, okay? O.J. Howard weirdly had 13 total snaps with the offense for Buffalo this past weekend, and I like O.J. Howard, but he's still obviously stuck behind Dawson Knox, who did not play, as far as I'm aware of, for the Buffalo Bills this past weekend. Khalil Shakur, for those of you in Dynasty Leagues, this was I believe he was a day 3 pick out of Buffalo, for Buffalo out of Boise State. And I think he's the heir apparent for that slot role that Cole Beasley has left behind. And they have, yes, brought in Jamison Crowder, but I think Khalil Shakur is the obvious heir apparent for that slot role moving forward. So if you watched or if you didn't watch the preseason game, I think you should be very encouraged by Khalil Shakur. He's someone I definitely liked going into the draft just back in April. And in Indianapolis, look, it's pretty fair. You're not really going to learn a whole lot about this offense. In redraft, I don't want any part of the tight ends here. Don't want Mo Alley Cox. Don't want Jelani Woods. But in Dynasty, I want Jelani Woods everywhere, okay? I want Jelani Woods everywhere because, 1, he does not costing a whole lot. And then 2, sure, there's a lot of bad PR right now about him looking lost and that he doesn't know the playbook or anything like that. Look, at tight ends, they don't break out this early. So, no, you don't need to own him now, but the sooner the better, because he's only going to cost you maybe a 5th round, 4th round Dynasty rookie draft pick at this point. But I was encouraged to see from the 3 wide receivers that I expect to start for the Indianapolis Colts, and that's Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, and Alec Pierce. They all had more than 13 snaps with the first team reps. And yeah, that's exciting to see. Michael Pittman was out there for every single rep that Matt Ryan was out there for. We know that Michael Pittman is going to be that alpha X receiver for these guys. Look, it's all about volume, okay? The Indianapolis Colts, they're not going to run away with this division. Yes, they're going to run the ball a good amount. Frank Reich loves to run the ball, and I think we can still expect that, right? You have Jonathan Taylor. There's talk about Jonathan Taylor getting a little bit less work so that way he can stay fresh for the playoffs. Look, that's more good news for Michael Pittman, who you can get at the 3rd and 4th round turn in redraft leagues right now, according to Fantasy Pros. If I can get Michael Pittman in redraft, okay, that's who I want. If I go running back, and then I'm looking here at the 4th round turn, I'm looking at Michael Pittman if I'm not able to get Juju Smith-Schuster. All right. Again, just going around the rest of the Indianapolis Colts offense before we move on to the next game. Paris Campbell, again, 16 snaps with the first team. Alec Pierce as well had 13 total snaps. I think that's great. Alec Pierce with only 13 snaps, I think that's actually more encouraging than it is discouraging as this is someone who's going to be rotating in and out of the slot for the Indianapolis Colts. I don't have any numbers right now of how Matt Ryan used to target the slot receiver, so I can't really relay what that correlation is going to be. But nonetheless, Alec Pierce getting 13 snaps with the first team in preseason week number 1 is very encouraging. And that'll wrap it up for the Indianapolis Colts and Buffalo Bills. Let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Seattle Seahawks. Lots to talk about in that Pittsburgh offense, right? George Pickens, the second-round pick out of Georgia, showing what he really is. He is that man. He is out there blocking cornerbacks into the sideline. And they didn't play him too much, but they played him with the first team almost entirely. George Pickens leading all wide receivers in this game in snaps with 16, 10 routes run, and 3 targets. Anyone else on this Steelers offense in terms of wide receivers, I'm not really too high on or worried about. Gunnar Olszewski, also had 14 snaps, 10 routes run. That's pretty encouraging for someone who is probably going to be deep on this roster behind Deontay Johnson. George Pickens, of course, Chase Claypool. Mitchell Trubisky, the obvious starter. Mason Rudolph only had 3 snaps, and then Kenny Pickett came out and had a pretty solid game. His ADOT was just over 6 yards, Kenny Pickett, that is. And so, that's kind of what we expected. Kenny Pickett, if you saw him play at Pitt last season, his best season, he is very much more of a game manager, okay? He will take an occasional shot down the field if he feels comfortable. But this is why I had him as our QB1. Just like Big Ben. Big Ben used to take big shots early in his career, and as he got a little bit of a noodle arm, he started to just kind of, dunk it down, check down, and I think we saw a lot of that, being able to take care of the ball and not be careless with it and forcing it into places that it shouldn't be out of Kenny Pickett this past weekend. And to me, that's encouraging because those short dink and dunks, as long as they're completed, let your player make the play after the catch. Look, that's what your coach wants to see from you. Make the smart decision. Don't give the other team the ball, rather, and let your guys make a play. All right, first and foremost. Let's move on to the Seattle side of the ball. Kenneth Walker, look, I know it wasn't the best game for him. He was very inefficient. Travis Homer had a really solid game, but there's a reason the Seattle Seahawks spent a second-round pick on the former Michigan State running back in Kenneth Walker III, because they obviously plan to use him once Penny is out after this season. Kenneth Walker III, right now in redraft, to me, he's nothing more but a handcuff to Rashad Penny, who ended the year as, I believe, a top 3 running back in the second half of the season. Yes, Rashad Penny, the former first-round pick, did that last season to end the fantasy football season. So I believe that this is still Rashad Penny's job to lose more than it is for him to solidify that job. He's only on a 1-year deal. So they are going to pay that man. They're going to run him into the ground probably, and then Kenneth Walker is the next man up for the Seattle backfield next season. Noah Fant, look, in terms of snaps, very encouraging. 20 snaps, but we're still talking about him catching passes from his former teammate Drew Lock. We've seen that connection before. Sure, it's fine. It's not great. Or Geno Smith, okay? So in terms of redraft, I'm not too excited to be drafting Noah Fant, who is definitely an athletic, great football player, great pass catcher. But this is just not someone for me and who I think is going to win leagues or matchups for me in redraft this season. Let's move to Florida, where 2 teams within the same state played against each other, and that's Miami, who played at Tampa Bay, or Tampa Bay for some of you. And, of course, Tom Brady was out for personal matters up until about, I believe, next week or the following. Not a whole lot to say about the Tampa Bay offense. I think we know what to expect. Leonard Fournette is going to be that lead running back out of the Buccaneers offense with Ronald Jones gone. Giovanni Bernard, though, I will say, looks like he kind of solidified himself as the RB2, which is, what is that? Oh, I hear a big sigh or a big cry for those Rashad White owners or managers, rather. And I am one of them. I have Rashad White in one of my leagues. Look, Rashad White is going to eventually be that man to be catching passes out of the backfield for whoever is going to be the quarterback whenever he does take those catches out of the backfield. He only had, 2 targets or so that wasn't really encouraging, but I do expect to see a whole lot more Rashad White, the former Arizona State running back, in the next few weeks, where maybe he can show that he's a little bit more talented, a little bit younger, a little bit more fresh than Giovanni Bernard. Everyone else, as far as the offense in Tampa Bay, not really all that different. We know who's going to be the starter. We know it's Tom Brady. We know that it's probably going to be Kyle Rudolph and Cameron Brate at the tight end position. Cade Otton had 13 snaps, mostly with the first team and Blaine Gabbert. So that's encouraging for those of you who like Cade Otton for the future tight end position of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But we all know it's going to be Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, Tom Brady, Leonard Fournette moving forward for this offense in Tampa Bay. Let's go to the Miami Dolphins, who are now being led by Coach Mike McDaniel, who presumably will be calling plays as well. Didn't see any Tua as far as I know of. And Mike Gesicki, weirdly enough, was playing with some of the backups, and so was Myles Gaskin. So, I wasn't high on Myles Gaskin before, but Mike Gesicki is someone that I like to watch because he is used in a very similar way, kind of like Kyle Pitts, where he's mostly lined up outside or in the slot. He's not really that inline tight end that we're used to seeing in the NFL. And it was kind of interesting seeing him play a little bit more, or maybe too many snaps, with the second team. And so I don't know what to make of that. I don't want to speculate on anything. Maybe they're trying to trade him. I'm not ruling that out as a possibility. Skylar Thompson, the former quarterback for the Kansas State Wildcats, didn't look too great. And of course, he's only playing for the backup position, most likely behind Tua in Miami. And as far as running backs, look, this is going to be a running back by committee. This is something that Coach McDaniel is bringing over from the Kyle Shanahan offense in San Francisco, and I don't see why they're going to change that up. I see Chase Edmonds as the head of that running back by committee, followed by Raheem Mostert, the former San Francisco 49er, and Myles Gaskin. So let's now move on to Houston and the New Orleans Saints. Again, these are teams where I think it's just mostly obvious who's going to be the starter, except for the Houston Texans backfield, who has Marlon Mack, Rex Burkhead, and now the Twitter darling of everyone, unless you were a fantasy analyst back during the draft, and that's Dameon Pierce, who had a little bit of a coming out party this past weekend for the Texans. Look, if you followed any of our stuff leading into the draft, you would know that Dameon Pierce, or if you read on our draft ledger, Dameon Pierce is a very violent runner, okay? That's like been his key word. His key word as a runner is that he's violent. My big knock on him was mostly vision, but what I saw from the preseason game is, man, it looks like he knows exactly where his assignment is supposed to be. He's moving forward, always falling forward, and he just uses his body in the most prominent way. He got the number 1 PFF rushing grade out of all running backs in the preseason this past weekend. And so that is very encouraging for some of you who drafted Dameon Pierce with a first, most likely a second-round pick in rookie drafts for Dynasty this past season. So definitely hold on to those Dameon Pierce shares, because I think his stock is only going to go up. I truly believe that. Davis Mills, of course, the presumable incumbent starting quarterback for the Houston Texans. And the wide receivers, I know a lot of you probably might not know who they are if you haven't been following fantasy or the NFL for quite some time. But Chris Conley, presumably to start. Brandon Cooks doesn't look like he played, but he will be the obvious starting wide receiver and the alpha wide receiver in this offense. Nico Collins, the second-year wide receiver, also played all 7 snaps with Davis Mills, so that's encouraging. I think that's what we can expect out of this offense. We can expect Brandon Cooks, Dameon Pierce, Marlon Mack, Rex Burkhead, kind of in a running back by committee. And the other wide receivers, Nico Collins, Chris Conley, if I didn't say that already. The tight end position has never really been a thing, or at least none of significance for the Houston Texans, and we'll keep it that way until they prove us wrong. And let's move over to the other side of the field, and that was the New Orleans Saints. Chris Olave and Marquez Callaway leading the first team reps for the wide receivers with 15 and a target for each of them. Look, don't be discouraged by the 15 snaps and only one target. They only had Andy Dalton and Ian Book out there for quarterbacking this offense. So, when Jameis Winston is going to be out there week one, Chris Olave, Marquez Callaway, Tre'Quan Smith, and Michael Thomas are all going to be perfectly fine. And if I have to pick one wide receiver that I need to own from this offense, it's most certainly going to be Michael Thomas. Look, Michael Thomas, who was easily a top 5 wide receiver in all formats just 2 to 3 years ago, is now being drafted in the 7th round of all redraft leagues across the board in best ball, which I'm using best ball ADP right now because that's where most of the drafts are taking place at this time. In about 3 weeks, I'll start using a little bit more of the redraft ADPs. But Michael Thomas being drafted rather in the 7th round is just absolutely bonkers. If this guy is completely healthy, that is someone who's going to win you a league. Go draft those running backs that you want in those first few rounds, and then take Michael Thomas in the 7th round, Juju Smith-Schuster in the 5th or 6th. Congratulations, you just won your league. Okay, so those are the wide receivers that I expect to get the most work with Jameis Winston and the New Orleans offense this season. Chris Olave, Marquez Callaway, Tre'Quan Smith might be that starter or the odd man out. Not really sure there. I have a feeling it's most likely going to be Marquez Callaway as the odd man out, Michael Thomas in the slot. All right, and now let's move on to the Mile High City where the Dallas Cowboys took on the Denver Broncos. And look, there's a whole lot that you could talk about, but I feel like I'd be wasting your time. Let's look at the Cowboys wide receivers. Jalen Tolbert leading the pack with 19 snaps, 5 targets. Look, this is a wide receiver who is, he's not a huge guy, but it looks like he's going to be mostly maintaining that outside position that we're going to be, that the Cowboys are going to be missing from Michael Gallup, and then also rotating in and out of the slot. Depending on where they have CeeDee Lamb lined up, that is. But he had 9 routes run and 5 targets, which led the entire offense for the Cowboys this past weekend. Simi Fehoko, the former Stanford product, also had 17 snaps. That's very encouraging, and he also reeled in a touchdown. Jake Ferguson also had 20 snaps with the Dallas Cowboys this past weekend. And Jake Ferguson, he did okay. He looked a little lost at times. He did run 7 routes, but that means they were mostly using him for blocking purposes. And Cooper Rush, the quarterback who presumably is still going to be the direct backup to Dak Prescott. But again, guys, this is going to be, Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, Jalen Tolbert. In case you didn't know, the preseason game now confirms it. He's going to be really that second wide receiver that we need, and then James Washington, depending on how his injury, how serious it may be. But that's what I expect from the Cowboys offense. Same for the Denver Broncos. You know that we're getting Russell Wilson, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, Tim Patrick now out for the season with that ACL injury that just happened a week and a half ago or so. And as far as the rest of the wide receivers, we are looking at Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and KJ Hamler, and Albert O. Okay, I don't think that anyone else on this team is really going to make much of an impact that we saw from this past weekend. The Denver Broncos and the Dallas Cowboys made it very, very clear that they were intending on benching their starters, so we didn't really get to see any of that. All right, so last game here, the 2 LA teams playing in their respective stadium. It's both of their stadiums. This is another game where I just feel like both of the teams have a very hard grasp of their positions. And that is, of course, on the Rams side, we're looking at Matt Stafford, Cam Akers in the backfield, Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp obviously, for the wide receivers there. And that third wide receiver position might be something to monitor for the Los Angeles Rams. We're not really sure if they're going to be bringing back OBJ. At this point, I would not be expecting it, but it would not be too much of a surprise if they're not, interested or happy with what they're getting out of their young guys in that wide receiver room, especially since OBJ already knows the offense. It'd be easy for them to bring him back once he's healthy. On the Los Angeles Chargers side, I liked what I saw from Jalen Guyton. Josh Palmer had a lot of hype going into this game just because he's been falling victim to the Twitter love, just based on practices and practice reps that we've seen throughout this offseason. But I think Jalen Guyton has firmly grasped that wide receiver 3 position for the Los Angeles Chargers. As we know, that offense is going to look like Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Isaiah Spiller, likely the RB2 behind him. Josh Palmer might be that odd man out for that wide receiver staff, or that wide receiver room, rather, where we have Keenan Allen, the obvious number 1 target for Justin Herbert. Mike Williams, who just signed a long-term extension with the Chargers that will take him to about the age of 30 or 31. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm not really sure where to follow there for that tight end position in the Chargers offense, but we might want to monitor that one throughout the preseason as well. And that could be potentially league winning for you guys. I do want to touch up on one more player that I didn't get to talk about, and that's Evan Ingram. I did a thread on Twitter about this. Look, Evan Ingram is costing you basically nothing. He's a 16th, 17th, 18th round pick in redraft best ball right now. And this is not me pushing all my chips in, guys, but this is a wake-up call, just like Brian Robinson. Evan Ingram's on a 1-year prove-it deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Doug Peterson has been very known to use 2 tight ends in his offense. And look, that may not mean that it's going to bode well for him in terms of opportunity, but he just caught a touchdown from the starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, just this past weekend. And if anything, that's only going to strengthen that confidence between the new veteran who's been brought in Evan Ingram from the New York Giants for the second-year quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who I think needs that type of confidence after it was completely shattered by the Urban Meyer staff last season. So I am very encouraged by Trevor Lawrence and anyone else in that Jacksonville offense. Like I said at the top of this show, Travis Etienne, you guys, he's got to be a buy for you. He has to be on your radar. I don't care if you hate the guy's guts. I don't care if he dated your daughter. You may as well draft Travis Etienne because he's going in that 4th, 5th round turn. So if you are planning on taking, 2 to 3 wide receivers in your first 5 rounds, you might want to start looking at Etienne as your RB1. I'm going to leave the SpeakPipe link down there for you guys. I want to hear who your favorite players, your favorite offensive players, defensive players from the preseason week 1. So that way we can put you on air, put you on one of the episodes, and I will, grade your take. And we can just talk about what you guys feel like putting on the airwaves. So, of course, I'm your host, Jay Anaya. This is your new favorite fantasy football podcast, and I will catch you guys on the next one.